Grief is such an overpowering emotion, especially after losing someone so close to you. It can take months, years, even decades to get back to normal, if that's even possible after experiencing a significant loss. This podcast was created to help you move through and release the emotions, allowing you to heal the hurt and begin living again. Listen in as I chat with medical professionals, grief workers, and people who have first-hand experience in losing a loved one, what their experience has been, and what they did to help heal themselves and those around them. Life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but I believe there is always a silver lining if you're willing to look. Welcome to the Release Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Release Grief Podcast. Today I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming Michael Gershe onto the podcast. He is the author of, is it Your Magic Life?
The Magic of Life.
The Magic of Life.
Yep. A stunned story of hope after tragedy, grief, and a Speedo.
Nice. I told him he could wear a Speedo on here, but he politely declined and said that his ship had sailed. On that one, he was no longer going to be flaunting it.
Unless we got tips, then I'm all for it after that.
Right. Well, tell me a little bit about your book. Tell me what it entails, the purpose of it.
The memoir took 20 years to write. A friend of mine, Greg Morton, who's a brilliant comedian, may have seen him on America's Got Talent. He was a semifinalist. The first time we were working at a comedy club here in Cuyahoga Falls, he found out about my life and he made me promise to write a book. And we're shaking hands on it back in the sound room, and he wasn't letting go until I said, I promise. And I was like, no one cares. But I started to write, and it took 20 years because I'm a procrastinator and I like naps. So it took a long time to write about overcoming tragedy and grief and using humor as a defense mechanism, everything, just that life story.
Right.
So I finally finished it in 2019 and I self-published it. And it was great because when I finished the principal writing, me and Greg were working together. I mean, we worked on and off over the 20-something years. But to look him in the eye and say, I fulfilled my promise to you was such a relief. And it was great. And the book has helped people through their own grief and tragedy. And Greg, the compliment he gave me was, you made me laugh and cry on the same page. And as you know, humor is one of those things that we need on a daily basis, but especially when we're going through grief, and sometimes we lose it. I've lost it, even as a comedian. The lowest of the lows, where you go, I don't have that sense of humor anymore, and then you're running in trouble. So it's about my life as a survivor of a drunk driving crash that killed my mother and almost myself when I was 8 weeks old. All my bones were broken. My skull was completely fractured.
Oh, wow.
One side of my head or the other. So the fact I'm 53 years old and talking to you is a blessing. Maybe a curse. We'll find out in a half hour from now as we do this. But
I doubt it's the curse. I doubt it. I'm just going to put that one out front right now.
But my mom, due to her injuries in the crash, died. And I mean, I'm a mother's child who never knew his mom because of a drunk driver. I never grew up with, the word mom is nothing in my vocabulary. There's no emotion behind it like it should. I never had that chance to run home from school and say, hey, mom, look what I drew for you. Or, hey, mom, what's for dinner? Or, hey, mom, those three simple words, I love you, because someone made a wrong choice that night. And around high school, I kind of got involved with Students Against Drunk Driving, as it was known back then. And it kind of put me on this path of being a speaker and finding that voice and realizing my mother's death wasn't going to be for nothing. And it put me on this avenue to do a program, which I started in 93, 94, called The Magic of Life, because I was a magician in my early days.
Got it.
And I was using magic in the program to symbolize certain things and so forth. Then I slowly got away from magic and more into stand-up comedy and because traveling with magic after 9/11 was pretty tough with some of the stuff. Like the needle through the balloon, the needle was a weapon, right? And I couldn't take that on the plane. And people were more interested in the magic than what I was talking about not driving impaired with some of
Right.
this. So, but the comedy was great because it allowed me to start the program with humor and then kind of lead them into my journey. So,
Mhm.
and if you can make someone laugh, I think you could take someone anywhere you want when you're doing a program on, preventing impaired driving. We're talking about death and grief. Um, so I started doing the program around 93 to high schools, colleges, military bases, and for the last 12, doing it at a local court here in Ohio for DUI offenders, an audience I
Okay.
never thought I would ever speak in front of, but it's been also the most rewarding because here are people who have been caught, have, the sentence, but if you could inspire them to make a difference, not only in their lives, but other people's lives,
Right.
then it's great. And I start off doing comedy, in the courtroom. They're probably thinking, what the hell is this? But if you can make 7, 8 people laugh, and then it's an hour and a half program. And I know, firsthand, seeing them change before your eyes is pretty awesome. Now, I'm not going to get everyone, I know that,
Right.
but it's great when, sometimes they'll ask questions. They'll ask about, what happened to the man that killed my mother, or, any effects, those type of things. Or, if a joke doesn't go well, they'll heckle me, and I know I have them, which is great. Um, but it's interactive, but I don't come from it as, like a lot of other programs where they're still angry, and anger, as we
Right.
both know, is the easiest emotion to go to. Do I still get mad at times? Yeah, because
Yeah.
Harvey Dennison, the drunk driver, took my mom away from me, and my brother, and my dad, and my, her family too. So the anger never really
Oh,
goes
wait. So they
away.
took your whole family away?
Well,
Not
they took
just
away my mom, but not my brother. My brother, well, I mean, they took my mom away from my brother and my dad. So my dad
Oh, I see.
still
I see.
survived. Yeah.
Okay. I
Sorry
was like,
about that.
oh, wait,
No, yeah,
you
that's
only
on.
mentioned your
Sorry.
mom. What about the other kids, the other
Right.
people?
Yeah. Well, we're not going to talk about my brother anyway. Nah, he's not
Oh,
here.
yeah.
But in that sense, took away so much, my mom, not only from my brother, my dad, and, but her side of the family and her
Yeah.
friends too, and trying to prevent that. Because here's a chance for anyone in the audience never to be, impaired driver. Um, but I'm also blessed in a way because through tragedy, I was raised by a Jamaican woman named Dolly, who, so it was supposed to be a temporary job. She answered an ad my grandmother put in the newspaper around October after the car crash. The crash happened September 19th, 1970. Around October-ish, Dolly comes to New York from England for 3 months to visit her sister. And her sister's a nurse. So, during the day, saw the ad, let me find a part-time job. Answered it, comes to the house in Spring Valley, New York, which is like an hour away from Brooklyn. And no one would take the job. And Dolly's thinking, oh, it's part-time. She put, when she was introduced to me, she put her fingers inside my crib, and I latched onto them. I smiled at her, and she said, this is where I need to be. This family needs me more than
Oh,
anything else at that point in time. So Monday through Friday, she would stay at the house as my dad would work overseas sometimes or whatever. And what was supposed to be a part-time job turned into a lifetime role.
oh,
She
wow.
raised me and my brother as her own flesh and blood, along with my dad. So I don't say I'm Jewish, I say I'm Jewish Jamaican because, I have a white Jewish family and a black Jamaican family. But to me, that was normal. That was just the way I
Yeah.
grew up. And you take something very tragic of losing our mom, and here is a woman that said, I will step into this role. You don't find too many people like that.
No.
And she's a
Because her
saint.
and your father, they weren't romantic with each other, were
They
they?
did eventually. They
Eventually. Okay.
eventually, when we moved from New York to South Florida in 90, it's 90, in 1990, not even then, 75. Shortly after that, I don't know how or when, but they became a couple. And
Okay.
again, normal, right? I mean, for us to see. Now, still not, mother, father, whatever. So it was still a different dynamic.
Hmm.
Um, but my dad, never. My mom was my dad's soulmate. Even though my
Yeah.
dad not, yeah. So he carried that grief and trauma with him
Mm.
till he died. I mean, I remember one year it was December 19th, 2012. He sent me and my brother an email, which would have been that day would have been their 48th wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
He said even to that day, it was still too hard to talk about my mom. He had Parkinson's, so that year he was in the hospital a few times, and you never know when you go in and out if you're ever going to come out. So he sent us
Right.
this email, and I remember going to the cemetery for the very first time after my grandfather passed away in '94, and I saw what returning or did to my father. I saw him sit down on a little bench not too far away from my mom's headstone, and I saw that, and
Mm.
and you carry that, especially for men, right? We don't like to talk about our
Yeah.
emotions and grief, and you see that, and I wish my dad would talk about my mom more, but not realizing that he just couldn't. He didn't have that ability to
Yeah.
share and talk. And when he passed away in 2018, and my aunt, his sister, passed away 90 days later,
Oh, wow.
I emulated what my father did. Never, you bottle it up, you keep it inside, and then and I was done. I was like, it's not like I wanted to die. I wanted the pain to stop, right?
Yeah.
I had a plan and everything, and then I thought about, well, I thought about my friends because in 2004 we lost one of our best friends due to drunk driving.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
remember what his death did to my best friends. And I also couldn't send my brother and Dolly and other family members back to the cemetery 3 times in 6 months.
Mm. Mm.
And that's when I asked for help. I had a lunch with a counselor, a friend of mine who's a grief counselor, and she
Hmm.
was like, "You don't look like yourself." And she told
Yeah.
me to make the appointment. And it took me like probably another 2 days. And I went on because I can't do this anymore. I go, I'm going to be dead if I don't get some
Yeah.
help. And I went on the questionnaire and I answered everything. Everything was yes except for one. I wasn't pregnant. So I was like, okay, A minus
I
on
got
this
one
one.
thing going for me
Right.
right now.
And my friend Ray, I also had a fundraiser to have a nonprofit. I had a fundraiser that same week, and my friend Ray was taking new pictures for me. And she was like, we can't use these pictures because you have sad eyes. And and as you know, as we're going through this stuff, we could show we're doing okay, right? Because mentally we're thinking no one will be able to tell how bad
No
we have
one
it.
can tell. No
And
one can
then
see the
your
pain that I'm
close
in.
friends, your connections know better, know you well.
Yeah.
And when she said that, and Ray was also a counselor. So, I have two friends that are counselors, which I'm never going to have friends who are counselors anymore because they go always tell. You can't fake it with them, right?
No.
But she was right. And once I got through grief counseling, started it, my friend who was the grief counselor, her first question was, let's talk about your mom's death and how that impacted all your relationships. And I was like, I'm not here to talk about my mom. I'm here to talk about my dad and my aunt. And she's like, oh no, we're not budging off of this. And I was 47 years old, and for the very first time, processing my mom's death. Even though I did the program for so long, still not really processing it,
Right.
right? Telling the story about it, but all that grief and trauma, all that stuff is still there.
Yeah.
And and I think if that was done when I was a kid, a teenager, would I be married and have kids? Sure. But I saw what my father went through with her death, and I went, I never want to experience that. So even when I was in relationships, I would do something to eventually screw it up, right?
Yeah.
Because people get too close or whatever it is, and you went, I
Right.
no. Um, and that was hard at times, but um, but the grief counseling was fantastic. When I was done with that part of it, even my counselor said, "You look like a different person." It's like, well, I feel like a different person because I finally had the tools to help.
Yeah.
You know that if we don't have the tools to help with grief or trauma, that's why people do make that choice to
They
end their
do.
lives. And one of the things I remember is that she said you thought about the people that you would be leaving behind, and their grief and their that stuff. And it's like, yeah, I can't do that to them.
Right.
So I had to find my way back. And later on in 2020, I went back to grief counseling. I hit 50, just the 50th anniversary of the car crash. All those things came back.
Yeah.
Back again and I did, and I can't remember what the initials stand for, but EMDR, the rapid
Yes.
same thing, and that was great because again, she goes, "Are you willing to do this?" I go, "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get healthy."
Yeah.
Short of maybe shock therapy, although that would have been cool once or twice.
Maybe at least
But
once to
maybe,
experience it, right?
but I did that, and I worked on my friend's Big John's situation because when he died as a result of being a drunk driver, a lot of anger because I was like, how dare he do this to me? He knew my story for
So
15
he
years.
had died by drunk driving
Yeah,
himself.
he was in a
He was
single
the
car
drunk driver.
crash
Okay.
and he hit a tree and he broke his neck.
Oh.
And then I had to call my other best friends up, but it was almost like, he knew my story for 15 years.
Hmm.
And this big idiot still did it, right? So there's a lot of anger towards that.
Yeah.
I carried that around from what 2004 to 2020.
Wow.
And
16 years.
then and EMDR really helped me because I was like, I can't keep this anger anymore. I love the guy and I have the ability to share his story, which I think can help, which I know saves lives, because especially with the DUI offenders, like, oh, look, that would have been John's first DUI and it cost him his life. If you keep doing it, you're going to end up like John, and I don't want anyone doing that.
Right.
So I focus on John and that one, but also some other things that I still had to work on. Being the 50th anniversary and so forth, and that really helped. But sharing and then doing these type of things has helped, and I think it's needed because if it helps, especially for men, not being afraid to talk about it because
And don't talk about it. They
yeah,
asked my husband the other night, because I've had so last year I had only just a handful of men on the podcast. It was mostly women, and women, we have no problem sharing our emotions. I mean, sometimes, like, I don't like to share my emotions and stuff 90% of the time, but we'll share it more freely than a man will. Well, this year I've had I think I've doubled the amount of men on my podcast this year as opposed to last year. And so I was, I've had some really great stories on here and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, they just every one of them breaks my heart and I learned something new. Every one of them." And so I asked my husband, I'm like, "How did you make it through our daughter's death? Like, what did you go through? What were your emotions?" What was he's like, "Oh, I just did it." I'm like, "This is not helpful at all.
right,
Not
right.
helpful."
Well, whatever works, right? But he had to do something. Obviously, just it
I
is.
think
Yep.
he
It's
did.
not you.
He drove, and so
Okay.
I think he would process when he was out on the road,
Okay.
as opposed to in listening to he got me on to listening to the uh near death experiences, NDEs, and
Okay.
the whole spirituality of things. And so I think that's how I processed a lot, well, besides writing the book, because that was a huge release of
Right.
emotions writing the book, because you have to go back and think about everything and maybe dwell on it to write that sentence or push that thought out or whatever. And for me, that was one of the biggest ways to release my emotional state was writing. Did you get the same experience with
I
that?
did, and because you could purge a lot, right? And you just write,
Yes.
write, and write. And then what was interesting was because I started it way back in '90 whenever Greg promised
Yeah.
it, and then little by little and I felt like I was a better writer over the time.
Oh yeah.
I also had a writing coach, and the first time she reviewed it, goes, "Great, you wrote it as a speaker. Now you have to write it as a writer." I was like, "Well, what the hell does that mean?" And so for 6 months, every Monday we'd meet, and the biggest line she always gave me was paint the scene. So I had to
Hmm.
go back and with her help, but yeah, to really flush out that emotion. You're right, because even on stage, if I get too emotional, sometimes it's hard, to get those words out.
Right.
But I think writing about it and then also going to counseling has helped cope with that depression and not being afraid of it. And Brene Brown helped with all of her books, and podcasts and not being afraid because I would say instead of depression owning me, now I can flip that script and own it. Now I'm free
Yeah.
from it. Still get
Yeah.
down and stuff, but I know what to do differently. I know to give
Have a
myself a
tool
little bit of
set.
a break. Um, and know I have this, or I could talk to someone.
Mhm.
When my book came out, I had family members who said, we always thought you were fine. No idea that I
Right.
was hurting that way as a kid. And because no, who's going to know? I was an infant when my mom
They
died.
think it didn't affect you at all.
Right. But when you're growing up, you notice other families are different, and every school form, for a while you'd write mother's name deceased, and you get used to that, and you have questions, and knowing your dad's not going to answer those questions. And so you stop
Mhm.
asking, but you want, right? But even having Dolly in her life, we knew it was normal for us, obviously, but you still question
Yeah.
certain things. And I was a swimmer, so when I got to college, swimming was a healthy outlet. I would swim angry. And I wasn't an angry person. If you came up to me and say, "Hey, Michael, how?" I'm not gonna say "f off," right? But swimming, I was angry at God, angry at Harvey Dennison, angry at my dad, angry at my coach who was a racist and anti-Semite. Swimming was a very good outlet for that. And then when I had to stop swimming due to injuries, it's like, well, now what do I do? But I never really self-medicated for grief and trauma. I self-medicated a little bit when I had to stop swimming because I had shoulder surgery, undid surgery to swim, and then I had Vicodin Budweiser for like a week, and then I went, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And when I was writing that book, I realized I had to go back and look when I was depressed the most. That was a day where I was like, I'm done with life, and then my mother kept me alive many times. In my early 20s when I lived on the 15th floor of my building, I went, I'm done. And I went, all right, I'm gonna do this in the morning, just do a nice swan dive. And I went to bed, and my mom came to me in this dream and said, Michael, I'm fine, stop worrying about me. And she gave me a hug, and I woke up face
Mm.
down the pillow like this. And I went, well,
Oh,
okay. And my mom saved my life. I really believe my mom saved my life in that car crash. And for me to do something
yeah.
stupid to what's the words I'm looking for? To make that,
Insignificant.
yeah, exactly. She saved my life for a reason. And I'm here for a reason and a purpose. Don't do anything to shorten that. My that wasn't my time then. It's not my time now. Uh,
Right.
and her legacy lives on through me. My brother teaches kids how to swim in South Florida. I can do these programs. So we're
Yeah.
both we're both doing something that's helping to save lives and making a difference. And I say, if you can make a difference in someone's life, then you're doing something pretty special. Like
I
my
think
dad
so.
did, Dolly. Yeah, and if you can do it with humor as a comedian, even better,
I
right?
love it because I'm the type too. I will go to laughter and jokes and fun quicker than anything else because it's people need to laugh. They don't laugh
Yeah,
enough. And they don't laugh at good things enough. And I
yeah,
think life
funny's
gets
funny,
them down so easy. I mean, you look at the news and it's always doom and gloom. We're just one spark away from total disaster of the
right?
whole, whatever going up in flames or crashing or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just like there's nothing good out there, it seems like. And you really have to dig deep to find the good in the day and to keep moving and stuff. But if you're constantly just bringing that stuff in,
Hmm.
like your mindset's just toast.
Yeah, and if we're not trying to heal ourselves, I think we probably both people that live that victim mentality. They
Yeah.
thrive in it and they don't want to move from it. I have a friend, oh, every day. How is it? Oh, it's one night and I can't talk to him because everything is so
Right.
negative. And I went, I
So
can't
doom and gloom.
do this. I mean, you're it's your choice to stay in that world. If
Correct.
that's what you want to do, great, but I'm not coming into it.
Correct.
Um, and it's hard work, to heal ourselves. But yeah, we can't do it alone either. You know,
No.
um, even your husband, I mean, he did it driving or something, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, because trying to do it yourself, it isn't going to work. So, um, but yeah, reaching out and getting that help. And I found out from my friends, they're like, no, you can be a burden. Because we both know, didn't want to ask for help because I didn't want to be a burden to someone. And then they go, and after they read through this, they went, you could be a burden and it's okay. I'm
Yeah.
pretty independent. And then even afterwards, Dolly was like, she would ask, are you okay? Are you okay? Like every so often we would talk, right? Because again, it hit her too,
Yeah.
reading some of this stuff. And even when I was writing, she's like, "Don't use my name." I'm like, "What? Do I still embarrass you now? I mean, it's been all this time." But she didn't
Like, I
want any
thought you'd have been over that by now.
yeah, she didn't want any recognition because what she thinks what she did doesn't deserve any. And I go, "That's why your story has to be told because what
Yeah,
you did for
absolutely.
us is special."
Because
And
your life would have been completely different had
oh
she
yeah,
not stepped
oh
in.
yeah, if it was just my dad raising me and my brother, oh yeah, we would have had Swanson frozen dinners every day. Um,
Right.
but Dolly would make sure we were clothed, picked us up from school, swim practice, whatever it is. My dad was still there and raised us, but there was still a piece of him gone. And I remember at his memorial service hearing some stories. I go, I wish I knew that guy because
Yeah.
obviously that crash happened totally different, you
Took the
know.
joy from him.
Yeah, 1970 was totally different. I remember seeing pictures of him, we were looking through the pictures for the memorial service, and
Yeah.
he was laying on the grass in the army, like a model. Like, well, who the hell was that guy? I didn't know him, you
Yeah.
know. But my dad was very supportive, whether it was photography for me and my brother, or most of my brother, because my dad was in photography, and that's how him and my mom met. He was shooting
Okay.
a school dance at NYU, and on the crowded dance floor, my mom was the only person looking at him in the photo. And I got back into photography around 2016. I was hiking and I had my iPhone 4, and my friend, the photographer Ray, who later would take my photos, she goes, "Go get a real camera." And I went, "Okay." So I got back into it, and that was a way to reconnect with my dad in a way with photography. When he passed, and my brother picked up my camera after the funeral, my brother got back into photography. So it's
Okay.
a great way to stay bonded with my dad, through that because he got us into that. Um, but it's those type of things that I think we can find ways to stay connected with our loved ones. It doesn't
Yeah, I
always have
think
to be
so.
sad things, but it's those things to kind of go, yeah, it still connects us. And I did my second TED talk about saved by our connections. My
Yeah,
mom
that's good.
saved me, my friends with John, that type of stuff. My dad, Dolly, um, my friend, the grief counselor, and it's important because I think the connections we make do have the ability to
Yes.
save our lives. The good ones, not
We
not not
don't know
talk
which
about the negative ones.
connections are which because they're
Yeah.
there for what is it, a reason, a season, or a time, and we never know what they are. But man, it's amazing how many times something has happened. I think, oh, somebody taught me that, or my friend shared this, or whatever. And it's like that information came in extremely handy, or the knowledge or the friendship or whatever it was, whatever it happened to be, was just like invaluable.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And you never know who that person is that's going to impact your life.
No,
Just like
not at
being
all.
a comedian, we did a fundraiser for pediatric cancer 2 weeks ago for four or five of my really good friends. And for them to still talk about the show and be grateful. Look, we're just, knuckleheads who love doing stand-up, and to be a part
Right.
of it, raise money. But when people come up to you afterwards and say, "Thank you for making me laugh. I needed that." It's pretty awesome to hear because
Yeah.
you write a joke, 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is, and then to have that impact. That's why I love doing stand up. It's one of the hardest things I ever had to do in my entire life, writing material and stuff. But that payoff, no different than when you help someone overcome grief or tragedy, and you see that life in their eyes. That's why we do it. We're not doing it for
Right.
fame and fortune. We're doing it to help other people. And
Right. To make a connection.
yeah, and it's fantastic to do. Just like this past weekend, I was at a theater with my friend, about 900 people, and you hear that roar of that laughter, and it's like a drug, right? But it
It
helps
is.
me with, you know, depression or, the ups and downs of life. And comedians, for us, it's cheap therapy, and I was writing this joke about, people ask, I have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's degree. They're like, "Why are you doing comedy?" I was like, "Well, my dad would ask that same question too." Well, all that education, but two words: childhood trauma. I was
Yeah.
4 years old when I was forced into a Speedo and thrown into the pool and told to kick and breathe and pull. You ever seen a 4-year-old multitask before? It's not pretty. And,
No.
when you're trying to save your life, and doing all that, and the fact of, shaving my legs before my face, it's just wrong, to be honest with you. But, if you can bring people laugh about those type of situations and laugh about it, again, bringing humor into people's lives. Uh,
Right.
yeah, we can look at our lives and help make a difference, not only for us, but other people. And I like that. And I think that's, been blessed to do it.
I think it's also because grief is so personal and so private that when you make that connection, it gives them a little bit of sense of not being so alone.
Hmm.
Because others don't connect it, if they've never experienced like a deep, profound loss like that, then they don't know what they can sympathize and theorize with you, but they don't know exactly what you're going through. And so to
Right.
find those people that do and understand and the different modalities that they have to help themselves, I find truly fascinating. And then, because they're beacons of light for others that, are in the midst of it. They're, going through this, the thick of it, or whatever they're in, whatever stage they're in. And to be able to, give someone a little bit of hope going through all of that to me is a billion times worth it.
Yeah, and I think you're right. That's what, when we do, when we share our stories, I was just telling this to a friend today, you know, um, some people have to earn the right to hear your story. And I forgot who said it. I don't know if it's Brene Brown or not, but we just can't go, hey, this happened to me, right? Because you want
Right,
a connection with someone, and it's like, whoa, oversharing. Whoa, I don't even know you. But
right.
it's, once you get to know someone and then you feel that comfortable level, they earn that right to hear it, which is weird because when I go into the school and I share my story, do they really earn the right? But it's a different type of sharing.
Yeah,
This
right.
or a personal connection with someone you just met. Yeah, that's the one thing when like dating, you go on a first date and someone overshares, like, I'm getting the hell out of here.
Too
It's a little,
much, can't
you know,
handle it, tapping
yeah,
out.
right. And I had to get used to that because people will ask, well, tell me about your parents or your mom. And it's like, well, okay, well, let
Yeah,
me
that's the
all this
first thing they
happened.
go to. Talk
And
about your family.
I feel bad because that's my story. I didn't have mom and dad for 30 years or 40 years. Well,
Yeah,
hold on to your seat because this is what happened. And I never want people to feel sorry for me. It's not why I do these programs. I don't do it for that. I want people to not drink and drive. I want people to get help for their grief and trauma and those type of things. Yeah, I never want sympathy for it because I know how lucky I am to be here and lucky to have
right.
people like Dolly in my life, my dad. Yeah, I never want people to feel sorry for me because that's not why I do it. I want them to have better lives.
Yeah, I think that's the goal for a lot of people, but some it doesn't seem that way. But for most
Yeah,
people,
right. You're right. Yeah.
some people, no, I think some people are just so stuck in. I don't know. After we lost our daughter, it was it was like the world changed. Um, and the things that used to matter, because I'm an entrepreneur, and the things that mattered at that time, which was I need to make money. That's, entrepreneur stuff 101, right? Make money. That's what you
Right.
do. But after her passing, it was not necessarily about making money anymore. It was about chasing happiness and chasing joy and things that made me happy, and you can't buy that with money. I mean, you can buy a better quality of life, you can buy a lot of things with money, but it does not change the fact of who you are inside. That's the
Yep.
change that you have to make yourself. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you're a shitty person, you're a shitty person with money or without. Doesn't matter.
Right. Right. Exactly right. Yeah.
But after we lost her, I realized money wasn't a goalpost that I resonated with. It was being happy and doing things that made me happy and to help others.
Yeah.
That's what mattered to me.
Right. Right. My dad gave me this career advice. He said, do something that makes you happy and makes lots of money. And I wanted
Yeah.
to go on vacation. So one out of two wasn't bad.
That's what I
With
say.
that, I sort of listened to my dad, but and yeah, you're 100% right because there are some unhappy millionaires, I'm sure, on
Mm,
one hand, but Yeah, the expression is right. And if we're happy in our lives, I have a roof over my head, I still put food on my table, gas my car, barely because of the prices, but whatever.
Right?
Yeah, but yeah, I don't, I'm not red in the ledger, and I'm pretty happy. And it's
Yeah.
interesting when in relationships, people go, well, you make me, I'm looking for someone to make me happy. No, we have to
Not
make
me.
ourselves happy first, right? And that's the objective. If we're happy, then I will invite someone into that happiness and
Correct.
join, right? I'm not looking for anyone to make me happy. Maybe the Miami Dolphins, I am. I want them to make me happy
Well,
by winning.
good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Um, that's never gonna happen.
Right?
But just to throw out another example of that, um, but yeah, we have to do that, and it's hard work to stay happy. You know that through
It's
loss and
inner
grief,
work.
right?
The inner
And
work.
because we also do that for our loved ones, just like they wouldn't want you to stay sad and depressed 24/7. Now, do we have our moments? Of course.
Yeah, I think everyone does.
Yeah, and because we could go outside today and see something that reminds us of them, and you feel, a little bit sad, and but then you remember our, I'll say, training, and how
Yeah,
to come and use that, so we're not stuck in that mode for weeks on end, and
yeah.
those shades are drawn because we've been there, we've done that, and we know it's not a life that we want to stay in.
No. No, there's too many other people around. Like we have other children and stuff too, and my spouse is still with me. My husband's still with me. So it's not like, I wouldn't want to leave and leave them behind, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah. 100.
So for me, it's like, yeah, we lost her, and that really sucks. But if I were to go too, then what? Would they ever come back from this?
Right. Yeah,
And then my grandchildren and great and how does this ripple
yeah,
effect play into my world talking
right,
about that?
right. Yeah, and that's, I remember that's, again, when I had that plan and I thought about all the other people holding the bag, because it was the same week that Anthony Bourdain killed
Mm,
himself, and then
yeah.
the woman that made the purses, now I forgot, Kate Spade.
Yes.
It was the same week, and I was like, and then you read and what those people meant to people, going, I don't want that. I still want to be here. I want to make people laugh. I was like, okay, how do I get over this?
Hmm.
Because it was like, again, I didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop. And and luckily I had people that could call me out on it and say, you
Yeah.
don't look like yourself, and you can't hide that pain anymore. So that was a good as well.
That is a
And
good thing. It's a good
yeah,
thing you listen to them as well, because some people would not listen. They would just
right.
say, whatever, what are you talking about? I'm fine. Everything's fine. I look fine. You just must need glasses today or something.
Right. You need to walk, or you need to go,
You need to drink more water because your
yeah,
vision's blurry.
right. Yeah.
Something.
Get more sleep, whatever it is. And then I went head first into Brene Brown, vulnerability, and all that stuff, and Robbins, and the counseling and the grief appointments, or where I would cry in the pillow for 15 minutes or whatever it was, or tossing the bing bag against the wall as hard as possible, and just all those little things, and
Mm,
Mother Nature, my hiking and the photography, and finding those things that brought joy into my life again,
yeah.
and and I know when my chemicals in my brain drops. I know that.
Hmm.
And then it may take a day or two, but I know slowly what I have to do to recover, or I could go talk to someone.
Yeah.
Not being
You're
afraid of it.
building that network.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people are afraid to ask for help. And when you ask for help, that's the sign for strength right there.
It
And to keep
is.
doing it, and then it's a habit forming, and then it's a lifestyle. People go, oh, it's not really a diet. You just have to change how you eat and do this and that, and then it's a lifestyle. So yeah, lifestyle changes work. Diets,
Do. They do.
right? So, and that's this whole thing with mental health and grief, and it's changing your lifestyle to become healthier, happier. And sometimes the motivation is not always for myself, but for my mom, for John, for my dad, grandparents. Because that's what they would want for me. So for me, they equate into everything also.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
yeah, they wouldn't want me to, sit around and grieve and be depressed the entire time. Yeah.
Right.
So I could have done that my whole life. I could have crawled into a bottle and go, woe is me,
You
my
could have
mother's
played
dead.
victim your entire
Yeah,
life.
my mom wouldn't want that. It's a crappy life, and luckily with dad and my Dolly, there didn't have that. And again, being blessed with a sense of humor and making people laugh and, using that against bullies and whatever. But yeah, humor is that one defense mechanism for me, but that one coping skill that does it for me, in terms of not self-medicating. Uh,
Yeah.
well, I'm on cold medication this week, but NyQuil, a little bit to get this cleared up. But yeah, it's for anyone, I would say sense of humor. Don't lose sight of that. And when you're reconnecting with yourself, humor, and then remember, why you are special, and what makes you you and why people care about you and love you and want to be around you.
Absolutely. I think it's so easy, you lose sight of the forest through the trees, right? Or
Yeah,
however that saying goes, you lose the trees for the forest. I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember how it goes. But it's like you don't realize what you have around you and are surrounded by until something happens. And then you realize, oh, crap, I have all this. This wasn't just fake.
right,
This wasn't, a figment of my imagination or, my ego telling me that nobody likes you, nobody loves you, you're worthless, all the head trash that you go through and don't be a burden, nobody wants to hear your story, nobody cares,
yeah.
all the same things.
Right,
Um,
and that's why there's support groups. That's why it's there because your loss of as a parent is different than my loss as a son
correct.
or a friend. So we both know that pain, but it's still a little bit
It's
different.
different. You're right. It
For
is different, 100%.
yeah, I mean, I can't. I would. I never can imagine what it felt like to lose a child. To say I have
Right.
a friend that speaks with me at the court. Her son was killed by a drunk driver. So you get a son's perspective, a friend's perspective, and a mom's perspective. I can't
Yeah.
speak on that. I have no experience, and oh gosh, it's horrible. But even for my friend to share her experience has helped her through her grief.
Yes.
I know sharing your experience helps you, helps others. But when we do that, it's nice for on all accounts, for that. And yeah, I mean, tragedy is tragedy, grief is grief, and we all experience it a little bit differently, but also a little bit the same in terms of, I think, the emotions are there.
It is.
Anger,
Mhm.
especially anger, right? I mean, how
The
long,
anger is the
how,
worst one, I
yeah.
think.
I mean, how long did you think you stayed in that anger mode for at first?
Oh, it was at least a couple years.
Okay. And what got you out of that phase, you think?
Um, I realized it wasn't serving me any purpose.
Okay.
And I don't think that I got out of it until I started writing my book.
Okay.
Because it helped me process those emotions because you think life's not fair. Why in the hell is this happening to me? She should have lived like we should have been able to see her grandkids, her wedding, like all these things, like, and you just get pissed. But it's like, but this is our existence right now. And there's, getting older is a privilege, not a right. We're not guaranteed anything in this world. And that means also outliving our children or our children outliving us.
Right.
And so just putting things in for me into a black and white perspective, like choosing to be present in my children's and my family's life, now, so that way I am, it's still going to hurt if they pass, but at least I'm living with them every day. I'm seeing them. I'm not stuck in a phone. I'm not stuck here. I'm not saying, oh, just go over there, sit down, shut up, blah, 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 blah. Taking it all for granted.
Right.
We do special things with our kids now, but it was a hard fought battle to get to here.
How long did it take you to start writing after she passed?
Well, she passed in 2016 in August, and I wanted to do a almost like a video sessions to help people through the stages of grief. I wanted to immediately, that was my thought. And I wrote out the whole program and then I sat on it and did nothing. And that was in 2016. And I've been doing entrepreneurship, the whole time since 2014. And then in 2022, we lost our 4-year-old granddaughter. And so then I'm like, okay, this is where I want to go. I was going to do it before. I didn't for whatever reason. Now I want to full steam ahead. And one of the first things that my business coach at the time told me to do, he goes, you have to write a book. You have to write your story. Like you have to put it on paper. And so I did that and published it in 2023. Let me get my numbers here right. It was 2023 when I published it in January. So, and I would say it was up until then, but because watching my son plan his daughter's funeral was a whole nother dynamic for me. And I went with him, and it was me and him and his wife, planning the funeral and just sitting there and watching them and the grief and the pain and stuff that they were in was just like 2.0. So I would say it was probably writing the book, and at that time there, it's like, I don't have a place for grief right now. I need to help my son. I need to help my other grandchildren because he had other children too. And so it was like, it just left. And I mean, I'm still upset. I'm still get angry. I still have moments where I want to scream and rage at the world, but it doesn't serve a purpose for me.
Right. Yeah.
So I choose to find something different, whether it's writing another book, creating a course or something, doing another talk, starting a podcast, whatever it is.
Yeah. So for your viewers, we're going to flip the script. I'm going to ask her more questions now. So, I want to know more. Now, were you nervous in publishing the book and letting all those emotions out for people to read for the book? So what was scarier, if anything, people that knew you to read those things more than, I guess that would be, right? Because people who know you maybe didn't know. So was that a scary thing to kind of go, here it is, and now you sit back and go, now what?
Yes. That was the scariest because she was my stepdaughter. So we had a blended family and I had helped raise her like one of my own children for, I think, 7 years. Gosh, I don't even remember now. From 2005 until 2016, 11 years. Gosh, I'm way off. My mathing is not mathing today. And so raising her and, spending time with her and watching her become a young adult and moving into her own place, like you just have all these emotions. And so we went through it with my husband's ex-wife, her mom and stuff. And great. Like we've become friends after the fact. Like it's not the ex is on the phone type of deal anymore. It's like, on, March 10th, it's her birthday. She would have been 27 years old. So, she's been gone for a few moments and we are going to the bowling alley and we're having a party and we're inviting the neighborhood to come with, whoever knew her. And we're doing it together as a team, And for me, but writing that book, our friendship hadn't evolved to what it is now at that point. And so writing that book, it was nerve-wracking because a lot of people didn't know that her and I had such a good friendship. Like we were building that friendship, And then when we lost my granddaughter, my 4-year-old granddaughter, I was out of state. My husband and I were out of state. And so she went to the hospital to be with my son when he lost his daughter. Because I couldn't be there.
Right.
And so like we have this weird dynamic that works for us. Like it doesn't work for a lot of people. It doesn't work for a lot of exes. And I tell people we had a very traumatic experience in our family. Like we lost a child that was a co-child, And would our relationship be like this if she was still here? Probably not. I don't know, but probably not.
Right.
But I gotta say, it's been a great transition for us and our family.
Right. I mean, well, yeah, I mean, it changes everything, right?
It does.
And then we have
Everything.
those choices to do. Do I want to go down this avenue or this one? And then you chose this one. And
Yes.
speed bumps are along the way, but eventually the road smooths out, and then sometimes we hit another speed bump.
Yep.
I guess the analogy is those waves, right? Grief is waves. You know, we have
Yes.
whatever. I just made it mine by saying speed bumps because I live in Ohio and we have potholes and
Well, yeah,
stuff.
billion of them. In
Yeah,
Minnesota, they'd be called potholes.
they're right. So, you know, the same things, so the waves, right? But yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting when we write our story and then sometimes when people read it, they don't, may never know how it impacts someone. And,
correct.
and I know only the people that I, got emails from or through Facebook or whatever, and how much my story has helped them. And that's when you gotta go, it was worth putting out there. As scary as it might have been, it was worth it because it goes back to helping one person. And
It
and and
does.
and what you said before about all those emotions, and then that the grief and the trauma, I mean, is yours, and no one can relate to it like you can and what you
Right.
did. But if we could still give someone hope or a tip or something that could help them through theirs, then it's okay. And as an entrepreneurship, nothing's original. Someone did it before you, right? So
Correct.
kind of model that off as well. Same thing, trying to help people with trauma and grief and depression,
Yeah.
and we're doing a better job of mental health. I mean, what, like a month ago, we had Elmo asking the question, and people opened up to a Muppet, and I was like, why can't people open up to other humans now? I mean, let's do
Right.
that. Um, so that was fantastic, where people could respond to Elmo, but let's get interactions between people that can help
Yeah.
others, because it
I think
showed how
that's
many
the
people are
biggest
still
thing
hurting. Yeah, it's
is the having the communications between people because we
right.
live in what is it called, a microwave society. We want everything right now,
Yeah,
but we don't want to do it face to face.
right. Yeah,
We want
well,
to do it through a computer screen or a phone or whatever it is. I don't know how many people tell me they hate talking on the phone. I'm like, I love talking on the phone. You get me on the damn phone, I won't shut up. That's my problem. You get me in a text and I'm like, 3 words. That's all
yeah.
you're like,
As
because
an
I don't know how
introvert,
they're going to interpret what I'm saying.
right. Well, sometimes that's the fun part too.
Well, yeah, I mean,
um, and as an introvert, I like the texting part. Is the phone sometimes go on and on. It's like, okay, I gotta do other stuff. But which is
right.
weird. People go, oh, how can you perform, on stage and be an introvert? Well, it takes a lot of
One-sided.
energy. We flip the switch, and then we're done.
Yeah.
Let me go get that energy back
Yep.
again. And when I had the book, I had to not hide after a show. I had to be out there to try to sell them and stuff. So even that was an adjustment. Or, people want to talk to you, and it's
Meet
like,
and greet.
yeah, I just want to get ready for the next show, or what joke did I miss on, or whatever. And then because it takes a lot of energy, and
It
you got
does.
to find that energy again to go back up there, whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or an hour. We need that time. So yeah, I don't mind tech. I like doing this. This is fun because of the interaction, and it's something I'm passionate about for talking. I don't like
Yes.
small talk. I like getting into these deep type of things where we could talk about many things, and we'll say it again, as men emotions, right? And those type, where 10 years ago, not even 10 years ago, 2018, 2000, I wouldn't tell you. I mean, briefly about my mom's death and stuff, but not at this depth of
Right.
description and those type of things. So not being afraid of it is fantastic, and when we're not afraid of something, then you have that courage to, in this case, talk about it, or,
Yeah.
and that's the nice thing. And I think that's, why writing a book or doing the podcast, whatever it is, we get back because we know we've been down that road. We want people to be healthy and not experience it long term, like maybe we went through.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I don't know, there's such a dynamic after you lose someone deeply and profoundly, whether it's a child, significant other, a mother, father, all these things. And it, when you think about it and the person, I classify it in stages. So not necessarily like the shock stage or the 7 stages or 5 stages of whatever of grief. It's more like the first, the middle, and the end.
Yeah.
The stages. Almost like I had a dream about this last night. It's kind of really wild here. It's called, what is it? The Maiden, the Mother, and the Crone.
Okay.
And I think about those in the stages. Is the maiden is, she's young, or they're young, and they have all these emotions and they're ups and downs and all over the place. And that's like the stage right after loss. Then you go into the mother, where it's like taking care of things and going on autopilot, kind of closing in on yourself, just being, doing. And then you have the crone, who's like, okay, this is my experience. How can I help those around me? And they go through this and they start helping the society around them, and they start giving off the advice and helping themselves, and they're transcending to a whole nother level. And so I don't know why it came to me like that, but I'm like, that was like a perfect fitting for it. And so I think of grief in those stages. And then I think when I talk to people, where are they at? Which stage are they in? Are they in the maiden, the mother, or the crone? And it's just, I don't care if they're a male or female. I put them in one of them.
Right.
Doesn't matter to me. I don't care. But it's like, because those emotions and those feelings, because I can only relate to the female side of it.
Right.
I can't
Right.
relate to the male side of it. And so for me, it works. But
Well, but that's the biggest thing. It works for you, right?
yeah,
And then if you can translate it to other people for it to work for them, then it's a good day at the office, right? So to speak.
correct.
For that, right? Exactly.
Correct. Well, I thank you so much, Michael, for being on this podcast. I have had a blast chatting with you about all the stuff, especially talking about men and emotions and Speedos and all the things.
Well, I joke and say men cry 2 times in their lives: at the end of Field of Dreams, when the father is playing catch, and when our sport teams wins a championship. That's about it.
Right?
That's about it. But Field of Dreams gets me every time.
Every time, right?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and again, making it kind of fun to talk about, right? And doesn't have to be
Yeah,
so blurry and uplifting, and like your story helps me and vice versa. So the nice thing is knowing that we're not alone, and I think that
correct.
helps with depression, because people think, oh, I'm all alone. No, you're not.
You're
We're all
not. We might not know exactly what you're
yeah,
experiencing, but we've been on this journey,
right, right.
and this journey of grief, and it can always help someone else, always.
So I thank you for the opportunity to share.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. And I will see everyone else in the next episode. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this special episode of Release. All the links plus a few extras are posted in the show notes below. And if you think someone you know could benefit by listening to this episode, please share it with them. And as always, keep going, keep being, keep doing. You are amazing.